Welcome back to another episode of the Successful Driver Podcast. Really pleased to be talking today to David Owen, the president of the National Association of Small Trucking Companies. David, really excited to talk to you today. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Ken. I love doing these kind of things, and particularly with, industry insiders like yourself. The topic, the successful truck driver, is as broad as it is long. And
for sure,
we're getting a pretty good example. We've gotten a pretty good example of how important that role is over the past couple of years. Just as a way of explanation, I'm the president of the National Association of Small Trucking Companies, and we're located in Hendersonville, Tennessee. We've been around 33 years. We started when everybody else thought that the small, full truckload, long-haul, family-owned trucking company would go the way of the doo-doo bird, and they tricked everybody and decided to stick around. So we were lucky to be right for the wrong reasons, and we've certainly prospered. We've got 33 years is a long time, but we've got now about 14,500 small trucking companies in our group, and that represents probably 130,000 trucks and drivers.
Wow.
We don't own any trucks. We don't dispatch any freight. We don't broker any freight. We don't hire drivers. So we're not in the trucking business, but we help small companies pretty much with buying power and advocacy. We're into the fuel buying business. We've got a wonderful fuel program that helps small carriers compete. And we're also we have an insurance agency, so we write some insurance. We have a software development company, so we write and sell some software, some proprietary software. We do drug and alcohol testing administration for probably 5,000 companies. And we're in every state in the continental United States. That's about as fast as I've ever done it, by the way. But we're not done yet, and we still are getting a very steady flow of new people into the trucking industry. And I think over the next few years, if the politics in the United States get straightened out just a little bit and they start leaving us alone and let us truck, you're going to find that more and more one guy, one truck, one gal, one truck owner operators get their own authority and start running what we think is maybe the most successful business model in long haul trucking. And that is one person, one trailer, one truck. And with computers and the way information moves now and what you guys can do on a computer is amazing to me. But you can run a truck very profitably. And the intrigue to driving a truck or having a small trucking company has to do with freedom. Running your own show is the last of the American dreams, and I think it's here to stay. We've got.
I do too.
There was a statistic that I love to quote. They did a deal that were like, it was a couple of years ago in one of the magazines, Trucking by the Numbers, and it said there were 441,000 for-hire carriers in the United States.
Wow.
441,000. And only 1,437 that had over 100 trucks. The definition of small by the government, by FMCSA, is 100 trucks or less. So we have 439,000 plus companies that are considered small. Anyhow, enough about NASTC. We're growing like a weed. We're adding 200 or 300 companies a month, and we're rocking and rolling. And we're helping companies that come through our programs and get hooked up with us, lower their operating ratio. They find better people to drive their truck. They improve their CSA scores, and they get a better rate on their insurance and stay out of trouble. And Rick, our collective, the people that go through our management safety program, our collective aggregated loss runs for those, I guess, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 trucks now, 9%. And the break-even point in the industry, in the insurance industry, is 65%. So wow. that's an amazing stat as well.
Yeah, really is. We can stick on NASTC for a second because obviously you kind of mentioned the last couple of years have been crazy. There's been a lot of changes. In the industry, there's just been a lot of changes to this country. What have you noticed for the small trucking company? What about the last 2 years? What have you learned maybe about the people that make up NASTC coming out of these last couple of years?
Well, they're the greatest people in the world. I mean, a lot of them come from rural communities, small towns. They're definitely Main Street, not Wall Street. They're not inside the Beltway, so to speak. And they're down to earth, straightforward, hardworking folks. You have to be to do what they do. That's so hard. One of the hardest jobs in America is running a truck long.
Yep.
And people, that's why there's so much turnover in trucking, I think, because people get into it and they see the appeal and it's romanticized to them by the recruiters and everything. They get into it and say, my Lord, how can anybody do this? And say they leave and go somewhere else. But the successful truck driver, one of the best things we do, we honor our 15 to 20 drivers of the year at our annual conference every year. And I get to spend a lot of time at the drivers meeting with guys that have 3 and 4 and 5 million accident-free miles. And I always ask them this one question I love to ask them is, number one, how did you do this? And the smartest answer I ever heard, this guy had 3 million accident-free miles. And I said, how in the world did you do that? If you think about it, 3 million accident-free miles is about 25 years running pretty hard and never touching anything but the loading dock. Anyhow, he said, well, I left on time and I drove the speed limit. How's that for wisdom?
Yeah.
If you could put that in the manual for successful truck driver, which is our topic, right?
Yeah.
Leave on time and drive the speed limit. Yeah. I would phrase it, drive within the flow of traffic, because speed limits are not set in stone. There are certain times when it's not appropriate to do 60. It's appropriate to do 70. And we also know that that split speeds between trucks and cars creates accidents, doesn't solve accidents. So anyhow, that was the other question I always ask these guys is, we talk about the number of people that have accidents with trucks and the number of fatalities every year. And I asked them each, I said, I want you to just write down the number. How many lives do you save a week? How many accidents do you avoid? Because that's a statistic that never gets recorded, right? And all this talk about automated trucks and getting the driver out from behind the wheel and micromanaging the driver down because he's a liar, dumb, or whatever big companies think they are, instead of treating them like professionals, which they are. A lot of that leads drivers into not becoming the professionals they need to be.
Wow.
As you can tell, I ramble quite a bit.
No, so man, this is.
I'm wind me up and get me started because I'll wander off the reservation.
I might need to start taking notes because some of this will preach. Yeah. So, David, I want to ask you. I want to know a little bit about your background in the trucking industry. How did you get started? Was it before NASTC, or what's your kind of truck? Your journey into the truck driving story, which you're obviously very much part of now as the president of NASTC.
Well, I'm not going to tell you what I did for the first 40 years of my life. That was that was my first life, and it didn't have it was so far away from trucking, it's a joke. But I went to work for Data Network when I was about 40. And I was old for that. I mean, it was an old man. They hired people your age and people right out of college normally. And I didn't realize I was one of the best salesmen in the world. So, but I fell in love with what they sold, particularly their truck posting, convoy product. And anyhow, that's how I got introduced into trucking. Data has two customers, casinos and trucking companies. And they had a ComCheck, which was a money sending program, which you're very aware of, I'm sure, and also a load posting program, and they sent in a phone program back then. But I worked for them for 3.5 years and worked my way up into national accounts. And when I got to national accounts, I was calling them their largest customers, guys with 500 to 5,000 trucks. And that's when the idea for NASTC germinated with me. The big guys really had all the advantages. They were buying fuel for 10% less than the small guys. They were buying trucks for 15, 20%, as you well know, with Arrow, that they can, when you buy 10 trucks, you get a better deal. Matter of fact, they got a better deal on everything than the little guy, the guy with a handful of trucks. So I just started taking notes and saying, well, if I could get a bunch of these fragmented small guys all over the country and get them somehow connected in a group, I can do some of these same kind of programs that the big guys do, and that would help them compete. And that's what we've done. It's really, we collective buying, advocacy, and we have programs, obviously, like our drug and alcohol testing program, our professional drivers advantage program, our management safety program, that have evolved as we've evolved. And all of them are geared to help a family-owned small entity compete.
You don't want to call him the little guy because there's nothing little about what these guys are doing and what they're undertaking.
Absolutely not. There's something that really doesn't hit home very often. The sophisticated guys in tall buildings that have 1,000 trucks don't like to hear this, but the safest, most profitable business model in trucking is one guy, one truck.
Well, hey, yeah. No.
I'm sorry. And I know that for a fact because I did a study when CSA came out in 2010. I took all the big companies. There's 36 long haul big companies, what I call mega fleets. And one of them was 4 times safer than the rest. And it was Landstar. And Landstar doesn't own any trucks. They're made up of capacity owners, one guy, one truck entities mostly. And they were 400% as far as fatalities, crashes, and property damage, 4 times safer than their counterparts.
Do you think that's just because of that kind of that owner operator mentality?
Because an owner operator can't afford to have an accident. I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah. They got their mortgage. They're hauling freight, but their mortgage is back there with it. If they have an accident, they're out of business, quite frankly.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. I had a feeling that's where you would take it. So I was just curious. Retention's kind of a big topic here, with driver shortages and wanting to keep, and retain your drivers out there. So, it's a big issue right now. What do you think the companies that are retaining some drivers are doing right, and what do you think the ones that aren't are doing wrong?
You want me to just give you my secret sauce, just right out of the chute?
Hey, you tell me as little or as much. You can speak in generalities if you like. I don't care.
Hey, I'm telling everybody. The only advantage small guys have over big guys, the only one is drivers. They live with them. They're in rural America. Their companies are in Una and Smyrna and small town America where a driver can live on $45,000 to $60,000 a year. Also, they find million-mile drivers and they learn how to keep them. They structure their company around the driver. We call it a driver-centric company. So, and most of them is fairly simple formula. You put them in a well-maintained truck. They go out on Sunday night or Monday morning. You give them all the loaded, legal, profitable miles you can give them and get them home on Friday afternoon for the football game. And you do it every week. You don't give them, you give them consistent miles every week. In order to do that, you've got to keep your truck maintained, number one, and you've got to do a good job dispatching that truck and finding them better paying freight and getting them home. And if you do those things and treat them like, I hate the expression, oh, we treat our drivers like human beings, like real human beings. How else would you treat somebody? I mean, really. But our guys, the driver is not only a part of the business family, they are the only revenue producer in that family. So they're number one. Everything's around that driver. When a small trucking company owner goes to work every morning, his job is to make that driver successful every day.
That's great.
That's the secret sauce.
Treat people well.
Hey,
it's just,
it's older than the Bible, isn't it?
Yeah, but it'll preach, man. It'll preach. David, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Love getting to hear what you guys are doing over at NASTC. Really appreciative of your time. Thank you for spending some time with us today talking about all kinds of stuff.
Thanks for having me on. I've enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, it was our pleasure. Yeah, we will for sure. I'm gonna bug you again for sure. It was a pleasure speaking with you. So
call me anytime, Ken. Thank you.
Yep, that's going to do it for this episode of the Successful Driver Podcast. Thank you to David Owen, president of NASTC. We'll talk to you later.